Music, when the leaves begin to die and the air grows cold. Something ancient stirs beneath the soil of autumn. Fall is the season of endings, when the world itself seems to hold its breath between the light of summer and the long shadow of winter. The trees become skeletons, the sun grows tired, and the nights creep closer, whispering secrets only the wind can carry. It's a time when whispers travel farther, when footsteps echo longer, and when we remember that the line between the living and the dead feels thinner than ever. But within these haunting true stories of fall, there's something deeper than fear, something profoundly human, a message about strength, faith, and that quiet fire inside us that refuses to be extinguished even when everything around us turns dark. Tonight, we'll step into that fragile twilight between fear and faith, between horror and hope, and discover the lessons that lie hidden in the shadows of 4 terrifying true fall horror stories. There's a story from a lonely town in Vermont about a young man named Caleb. He had just turned 20 and needed a job to help his mother pay rent before winter came. The only place hiring was a small roadside gas station, miles from the nearest town, surrounded by thick woods that rustled like whispers in the night. Locals warned him about the man who walks the road after midnight. Caleb would laugh and wave them off, saying he didn't believe in ghost stories. He said fear was for children, not for men who worked long hours under flickering fluorescent lights. But one October night, just past 2 in the morning, Caleb realized that fear wasn't something you chose, it was something that chose you. The fog had rolled in so heavy that he couldn't see more than a few feet in front of him. The air smelled like rain and rust, and the silence was the kind that hums in your ears. He stepped outside to check the pumps, holding a flashlight that trembled slightly in his hand. That's when he saw it, a figure walking down the middle of the road, coming closer with every step. Tall, limping, dragging one leg as if it were broken, its head tilted too far to one side, its face hidden beneath a wide-brimmed hat. Caleb froze, his breath caught in his throat, the sound of his heart loud in his ears. The figure stopped just 10 feet away and whispered, almost pleadingly, "You shouldn't be here." Caleb stumbled backward and ran inside, slamming the glass door and locking it. The lights flickered, the air conditioner cut off, and for what felt like an eternity, the figure just stood outside, still, staring. When morning came, there were no footprints, no evidence of anyone on that fog-covered road. He quit the job the next day. But what haunted him afterward wasn't the figure, it was what the fear had shown him. The raw truth of his own vulnerability, the reality that courage isn't the absence of fear, it's what you do when you're drowning in it. He told a friend years later, "Fear taught me who I was." And maybe that's what fear really is, not a curse, but a mirror. It shows us the parts of ourselves that hide in comfort. It sharpens our senses, forces us to pay attention, and demands that we stop pretending we're in control. The unknown isn't our enemy, it's our teacher. In that confrontation with the dark, something inside of us wakes up. Maybe we need to be afraid sometimes, not to break, but to see what's worth protecting. Because fear is a compass, it points us toward the things that matter most. In Ohio, a family lived on the edge of a quiet field, surrounded by maples that burned red every October. One night, during a massive power outage, their world turned completely dark. The wind screamed through the trees, and the only sound was the steady knock. Knock, knock on their walls. It wasn't the wind, it was deliberate, slow, measured, as if someone was circling the house. The mother gathered her children and prayed, her voice trembling. The knocking grew louder. The father reached for his shotgun, but something in the air felt wrong, like they weren't meant to open the door. So they stayed inside, whispering prayers through the longest night of their lives. When the sun rose, they went outside to find muddy handprints smeared across the siding. Dozens of them leading into the forest and vanishing between the trees. No more footprints. No sign of anyone. Just silence. The family never forgot that night. But they said something changed afterward. Fear didn't control them anymore, because when you're trapped in the dark, and you choose faith instead of panic, something powerful happens, your light grows. Faith isn't denial of fear, it's defiance in the face of it. It's us whispering, "I believe even when you can't see what's ahead." The family still lives in that house today. And every fall, when the power flickers, they light a candle and remind each other, the night always ends. In another part of the country, a woman named Grace visited her husband's grave every fall. He had died suddenly, A car accident that shattered her life in one moment. Every year she would bring flowers, sit by his headstone, and talk to him as if he was still listening. But one night, when the sky was violet and the air carried the scent of rain, she saw a shadow sitting beside the grave. His shape, his posture, unmistakable. Her heart froze. But instead of running, she knelt beside it and whispered, "It's okay to rest." The shadow faded. For the first time in years, she didn't cry. She said later that she felt a warmth pass through her chest, as though something had finally let go. Not her love, but her grief. Sometimes, the ghosts that haunt us aren't the ones outside our walls. They're the ones inside our hearts. The memories we refuse to release, the guilt we keep feeding. Letting go doesn't mean forgetting. It means freeing both ourselves and what's gone, allowing peace to return where pain once lived. There is a story from Alaska about a hunter who lost his way in the endless fall woods. The snow hadn't yet fallen, but the cold was merciless, and the trees stood like silent sentinels. He wandered for hours, the sun disappearing behind the horizon too fast. No phone signal, no path, just the haunting stillness of the wild. He built a small shelter out of fallen branches and waited. Every night, he heard something moving outside, pacing. On the third night, he realized it wasn't an animal, it was the echo of his own fear. In that vast silence, he met himself. Stripped of comfort, stripped of distraction, he discovered a strength he didn't know he had. When he was finally rescued, he told reporters, "I was never alone, I just had to remember who I was." Isolation reveals something most people never get to see, the truth beneath the noise. We spend so much of life surrounded by movement, by people, by distraction, that we forget the voice inside us. But when fear corners you and solitude holds you still, you begin to remember. You remember that you are capable, that you are resilient, that survival isn't about escaping fear, it's about walking through it with steady breath. A woman once bought an old farmhouse in Pennsylvania, and every fall she would hear crying from the attic. Faint, childlike sobs. The first few nights, she tried to ignore it. But as October deepened, the crying grew louder, until it echoed through her dreams. One day, she gathered her courage and went up there with a flashlight. In a corner beneath dusty boards, she found a small box filled with letters, written by a little girl decades earlier. They were letters to her mother, asking why she had to die so young. The woman wept. She restored the child's grave in the nearby cemetery, planting wildflowers around it. The crying stopped. Some hauntings aren't meant to scare, they're meant to be heard. Sometimes, the past echoes through the present, not to punish, but to plead for remembrance. Compassion can silence centuries of sorrow. On a chilly October evening, a group of friends went camping in the mountains. They laughed, told stories, roasted marshmallows, until the flashlight batteries died. The darkness fell like a curtain. Thick and consuming fear took hold. Every sound became a threat. Every movement felt like danger. But one boy pulled a lighter from his pocket and flicked it on. That tiny flame was barely enough to see, but it was enough to bring everyone closer together. They made it through the night, guided by a spark no bigger than a fingernail. Later, that boy said, "It wasn't the flame that saved us, it was the hope." Light exists to be shared. Even when yours feels small, someone else may be relying on its glow. Hope multiplies when given away. In Maine, there's a town that holds an annual event called the Fall of Shadows. Every year, as the leaves turn red and orange, neighbors gather around a massive bonfire and share their scariest true stories. What began as a night of fright became something sacred. People started telling not just ghost stories, but real stories of loss, of fear, of survival. They found that when they spoke their darkness aloud, it lost some of its power. Fear, they learned, connects us more deeply than comfort ever could. We all carry shadows, but when we share them, they no longer consume us. They transform into bridges between hearts. And then there's the story of a couple driving home on Halloween night. The road was empty, the trees shedding their last leaves under a silver moon. Suddenly, something darted in front of their car. A deer, they thought. They braked hard, the tires screeching against the cold asphalt. When they stepped out, trembling, there was nothing there. Just silence, and the smell of burnt rubber. They drove home, shaken, but strangely grateful, aware of how thin the line between life and death can be. From that night on, they began living differently. Kinder, slower, more grateful. Fall teaches us that endings aren't destruction, but transformation. Every leaf that dies nourishes the soil for something new. Every loss makes room for growth. Even when the world grows cold and the shadows stretch longer, remember, the dark season is not the end, it's preparation for rebirth. These stories remind us that courage isn't the absence of fear, but the act of moving forward through it. When you feel lost in your own autumn, when everything seems to be falling apart, know that something inside you is learning how to bloom again. If you're watching this tonight, feeling haunted by memories, fears, or the ghosts of what once was, hold on, light always returns. The coldest nights give way to dawn, and even the deepest wounds can heal with time, love, and faith. Dear God, may we walk through our seasons of fear with faith instead of despair. When the night feels endless, remind us that even the longest fall gives way to spring. May we learn from the darkness, cherish the light, and never forget that even in horror, there is hope.